You want to go live, Kelly?
It says live.
Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Jennifer Owens. Welcome to Working Mothers Hangout on Air. I am the editorial director of Working Mother Media and the director of the Working Mother Research Institute. You know, at Working Mother, we talk a lot about how to request flex at your office, how to design a flex request, even how to specifically talk about it with your manager. We even launched National Flex Day, which is the third Tuesday of every October, to celebrate workplace flexibility. But what we don't talk a lot about in our world is the policy side of flex. And it's an approach that some other cities, states, even countries are considering. And we are going to have Scott Stringer today, the New York City Comptroller, who is proposing a law in New York City that supports the right to flex. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about what policies can do to support workplace flex. But before I introduce my panelists, I'd like to note that we're going to be taking questions a little bit later. Here's how. There is an Ask a Question button under the broadcast that you're watching right now. You can also tweet a question to us at @_workingmother_. It's all one word. So @_workingmother_. And we'll be watching the tweets to see what questions you might have. So, to get started, we're going to introduce my wonderful panel today. First up, we have my fearless leader, Carol Evans, who not only helped launch our magazines in the late 1970s, she actually also launched what has become the Working Mother 100 Best Companies, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary. Now, Carol did this when she was 12, so she was really a child prodigy in launching workplace flexibility initiatives.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome, and excuse my cough. So Carol would go on to lead one and then another publishing company, and she returned to Working Mother in 2001 to buy it, becoming not only the first woman to own Working Mother, but the first working mother. And now, Working Mother Media to create the best companies for multicultural women, the best law firms for women. What else do we have? We have best companies for hourly workers. We also own the Diversity Best Practices Division, which is a corporate membership organization, and the National Association for Female Executives, which is individual top women coming together and kind of supporting each other and learning and growing and committing to becoming boards of directors for their own companies. She's also run our conferences and events to, I was going to say 25 events. I just heard this morning it may be even more next year. So yes. It all goes to serve our original mission to serve women boldly. So thank you, Carol, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm really glad to be here.
Now, on his way, and he's rushing through the traffic right now, is Scott Stringer, as I noted, is our New York City Comptroller. And he has spent his entire, there he is right there.
Hello there.
Scott. Hello.
How are you?
Very good. So great to see you.
It's great to see both of you.
Mr. Stringer has spent his entire career, his public service career, serving New York City's middle class. And he's been working now on strengthening the city's fiscal health and championing good government. He was elected to the New York State Assembly in 1992, represented Manhattan's West Side for 13 years, and in 2005 was elected to Manhattan Borough President. And since 2013, he's been the investment advisor, custodian, trustees of New York City's 5 pension funds. It's a lot of money, and thank goodness you're overseeing it. But he's also used his auditing powers to investigate school overcrowding, as well as the New York City Housing Authority, and created a Hurricane Sandy oversight unit to monitor how those federal disaster relief and recovery dollars are being used to help rebuild neighborhoods, like my mother-in-law's, and to make New York City a more sustainable city. But, you know, what's important to us, and especially Carol, is that Mr. Stringer is a working father who is married to a working mother. And he and his wife have 2 sons, both under the age of 3, and they live in Manhattan. So welcome, Mr. Stringer. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for that generous introduction.
Carol, I'm going to pass to you and to get our conversation going.
Terrific. Scott, I am so excited to talk to you about this topic because it really dovetails what you're working on for the city dovetails with everything that we've been working on for, 35 years now. And I think that if the city of New York can really get behind this right to request law, that it'll be a big game changer for the country as a whole, because a lot of people will take notice and follow suit. So I'm really excited about it, and I want to just dig into some of the details so that our audience can understand a little bit more. And let me start with the report that you released this year. First of all, your office released Families and Flexibility, Reshaping the Workplace for the 21st Century. It's a comprehensive report that recommends creating a formal right-to-request mechanism for companies. This would allow employees to propose possible work flex options to their employers. And so first of all, I want to ask you what prompted the report, and what are the biggest takeaways from the report for you that we should know about?
Well, I'm so excited. This is my first Google chat, so
oh, good.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Let me just delve into why I felt this was important. It was really about two things. The first is, as controller, I have to think about the economic competitiveness for our city when you compare us to other cities around the country and around the world. And the fact is that this is no longer the Mad Men era. This is a new day for our economy in New York City. And flexible work schedules and predictive scheduling is so crucial to being competitive, because companies that understand this will attract the best and the brightest to their work. And that makes a lot of sense to me. On a personal level, I have to tell you, with two little children under the age of 3, it's not easy with 2 working people in a household to get the kids to school, to coordinate doctor's appointments, to deal with elderly parents. But this is something that is playing out throughout our city. And in order to keep people in the workforce, especially women who were the first to opt out when it comes to caring for a parent or a child, this makes total sense, and we should be forward thinking about this.
Boy, we certainly agree with you. I mean, we have come to the conclusion that flex is the answer to just about everything that concerns working families. And one of the things that we know is that our companies who are participants in the Working Mother 100 Best Companies, they know that there's a bottom line business advantage to flex. We see it in several ways. First of all, it reduces attrition because people don't have to quit their jobs, they can flex instead. And second of all, there's savings on real estate and other issues like that. There's financial savings. And third, there's a readiness for any kind of disasters that might happen as people are prepared to work from home or from other locations. What about the economic aspect of this for the city of New York? How do you see workplace flexibility playing into the city's economic future?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, this proposal is good for individuals, good for families, but it's really good for business, because this will increase productivity. This keeps the best employees in the workforce. And when you look at companies, accounting firms like Deloitte, for example, they've had a flex time policy that they would argue is saving tens of millions of dollars in real estate costs and other costs to the company. So they're big on this. This is not just us telling business what to do or trying to create a mandate. This is about partnering with some of the biggest companies to say, look, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can retain great employees, but we can also give a little flexibility that will allow people to lead lives in this very complicated city and complicated world. And I think that's very important. One of the things I know from my experience with my 2 little kids, there is an unpredictable aspect to raising families, especially little babies. And part of what I would say is flex is a good start, but we also have to look at some low-wage worker industries where we do need predictive work schedules so that you can schedule those doctor appointments and you can make sure kids get to school on a rainy day. And if we could fashion in New York City the kind of protocols, the way of looking at this, giving a little advance notification, changing the work schedule, at least having a conversation with the supervisor about this, as in the case of flex. I'm telling you, I think New York City will grow economically in a faster, even more robust way than we're growing now.
I agree, and it really can help also with, the commuter issues that they have of overcrowding during commuting time and traffic problems like what you experienced, but having people work flexible schedules so that they're coming in, leaving at different times, and also having people prepared to work from home, that really saves a lot on commuting, on pollution. There's so many advantages to it, and I think that, one of the things that I'm pleased to hear from you is how much you've learned from the best companies. So Working Mothers 100 Best Companies all have very, very strong flex programs. You can't really earn a spot on our list without having really strong flex programs. And we've seen that there's a lot that can be learned by following their examples, because they've all experimented with flex, and they've experimented both with informal and formal flex. And one of the things that we've dug into a lot is how to administer flex schedules for hourly workers and for shift workers. And so I'm very pleased to hear you talking about that, because if we can't let our hourly workers or our low-wage workers in on the flexible work arrangement benefit, then you'll have a huge number of employees that this isn't applicable for at all. So I really cheer you on in looking at how does this apply to shift workers, and there's a lot of best practices that we've discussed about that. But I'm curious about, how do you use flex? Is it something that you can use in your own life with your own kids and with your working mother wife?
I'm fortunate. My wife is a fundraising professional in New York. She's very good at what she does. She wants very much to have a professional career and raise a family. And fortunately, she's in a company that gives her just enough flexibility to deal with what she has to deal with. And while as an elected official, I'm kind of 24/7, I also have to think about how to balance my wife's career with taking care of our children. And that's the kind of conversation that people have to have. Now, imagine if you're a single parent, and it's all up to you. And imagine if you're a low-wage worker in a shift industry. You can't raise the child and get that kid to where you want that kid to be without having some flexibility or some predictability, as is the case with so many people. And it is in all of our interest to keep people in the workforce, because that helps the kids, that helps pay the rent, that creates business in certain communities. And this is something that I think is the true challenge going into the 21st century. Kids are working differently. They're in shared office space. It's a different era than it was in the 50s and 60s when my parents were in the workforce. And I think we have to come to terms with it as a country. Part of the challenge for me this weekend is my little guy Max turned 3 years old.
Oh.
It was amazing. He said that yesterday at his birthday party, it was the greatest moment of his life. And it was a great moment for me. But I think every parent knows what it's like to prepare for that party. It doesn't start on the weekend.
No.
You have to strategize the whole week. Who's going to get the cake? Where are you going to get the gifts? All of this. Who's setting out the invitations? Flex time allows you to have that moment with your child, which is important for that child as well as for you.
That's exactly right, and that leads me to a really good segue for my next question. A lot of what is important to working moms and dads is to have the kind of flex that works for them. I mean, sometimes people want compressed work weeks, so they have that day off that they've earned through compressed work weeks. Sometimes it's work from home. Sometimes it's starting and stopping your day at different times, and it might be something for shift workers. It could be intermittent leave, where you're allowed to take off time without having to devote a whole 8-hour shift to going to the doctor or to the child's doctor. So I'm curious as to the right to request law. Does that take into account in your proposal the need to customize flex for the individuals within the employees?
That is the point of a flex time schedule. I love the high-tech economy, but we have to get away from computer setting schedules and acknowledge that there is a human element. And workforce patterns are changing. In the old days, way back when, we had an 8-hour work week, 9 to 5 and 9 to 6, and there was no flexibility. Today, people work in some in the morning, maybe less in the afternoon, and a lot at night, and vice versa, and you mix up schedules. And that's just the reality of a global economy, changing family patterns, the challenges that low-wage workers meet. So part of a flex time law is about sitting down with the employer in a safe space and being able to talk honestly and strategically about what's the best schedule for you and what's the best schedule for the company. And being able to have that discussion without fear of retribution is a great starting point to tackle all of these work schedule issues that we're going to face, especially when we usher in this new high-tech economy, and our city is now competing globally for the best workers, best assets to a company.
Yeah, that's really important because when I talk to moms and dads around the country, they really want to make sure that that they're not going to be stigmatized at work. You know, they don't want to feel like asking for flex or using flex is going to ruin their career, stand in the way of the next promotion or raise, even more important. And so there's a lot of fear about stigma. I always talk to my audiences about being brave and going for flex and framing it in a very positive way, but to have some legislation that supports them so they won't be stigmatized is really key. I think there's going to be a lot of support for this legislation from moms and dads in New York City. What could working parents do to help you with this quest and to support this legislation?
Well, you know, we've introduced this legislation. There's bills in the New York City Council, and we need moms and dads and also people who may not have children but who are taking care of a sick mom to write in and begin to demand action on this. I also think this is the beginning of a sea change in how we do business. And as you know, we're putting together an extraordinary coalition. Advocates, moms, dads, people who are big business leaders who recognize that flex is important. And having that safe space will go a long way to, I think, meeting the economic challenges. And listen, in New York City, I would make the argument as controller, we cannot create a vibrant, technologically sound economy without offering a flex time option. It just makes all the sense from an economic point of view. And the more these companies show us that flex actually increases their value and that because they're able to keep their best workers, I think this is something that we should all be marching for, campaigning for, and advocating for.
I agree, and one of the things that I feel is so important is to take into account how millennials are working. You mentioned it before, but millennials are really side by side with working in this because they believe that flex is their right, you know, and they believe that this is how people should work. And I think we're asking a lot of young people in their early careers where, you know, there's a lot of pressure to work hard, but I think that even a small amount of flexibility goes a long way toward making millennials feel that sense of freedom that they desire so much. And I also think on the opposite end, you know, the baby boomers are living much longer, and many of us are not retiring, but we are faced with supporting our own parents through the end of their lives in terms of how do we help them find the right care and help them with their end-of-life issues, and flex is the answer to that for sure.
Well, you know, you touched on the millennials, and I think that's a real conversation that we need to have. The whole work concept is much different than when we were at that millennial phase. People want to work, this generation wants to work in shared office space. They want to work laptops. They want to be more dealing with other of their colleagues around a table, conferring, building platforms, apps. This is a totally different generation. They can come in, start work at 11 and keep working till 2 o'clock in the morning. They want that flexibility. These new industries demand that flexibility. You know, when I was growing up, you know, my mother said, you know, just get a job, get a job, right? And, you know, she still says that from time to time. But today, you know, parents are saying, go build a company and then go talk to other people around the globe at different times of night. It's a different way of working. So, of course, flex and the new working generation matters. And as far as being part of the latter part of the baby boomer generation, I mean, I'm glad I have these two kids because they are going to take care of me in my old age. So I want to give them as much flexibility as possible.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. And really, we find that, you know, when people have that flexibility to work from home a couple of days a week, the younger people feel very environmentally proactive by doing that. You know, they're not contributing to the carbon footprint when they're working at home. They don't want to work from home all the time, but they want to work from home some of the time and when it makes sense for them. And that's, you know, that's a really big deal.
And by the way, one size does not fit all. I mean, you know, and listen, the one thing about flex is there may be a company model where you can't work from home, and there's a reason for that.
Yes.
Or maybe your view of flex time is not what the company's view is. So that's why you have that conversation to see if you can meld it. It's a give and take. It's a strategic way of looking at work schedules. And that's what's so exciting, because the employee buys into the company because the company is showing respect and flexibility so that they can also believe the company is going to be for them over the course of work life.
Yeah, exactly. And people are changing jobs more, so I think mandating this throughout the city would be really important to keep up with people's career paths these days. I also heard, by the way, that you hosted a conference this fall and heard a lot about it. Maybe you would like to share something from that conference. I know you were working with our friends at KPMG, who are also part of our Working Mother 100 Best Companies list, and have great track record on Flex. Was there something you'd like to share with us from that conference?
You know, we had some tremendous speakers at that conference. It was really, I think, the first of its kind. We had breakout sessions. We had folks from the business community. We had Marianne Slaughter there, who was just fantastic in terms of laying out the case for Flex and how we look at our workforce. But the reason I did the conference was also because I recognized that we've got to educate people that this is actually a business model that works. So you can introduce all the legislation in the world. I've certainly done my share. But to have a conversation, and this should take place around the country, where we can begin to share our experiences and our strategies, I think this is going to be very important. So the conference was great. Some people came because they wanted to learn. Some people came because they wanted to organize. But most people came because they recognize that we are moving in a different economic place in this country and in this city.
That's right, and that we all need to be educating and educated about this, because it's a complex issue that meets the needs of so many people. But I'm very encouraged by the fact that Vermont and the city of San Francisco have passed some right to request laws. Do you think that, are you in agreement with me that there's some momentum to this, and do you think that we'll have a real chance of passing this in New York City?
Well, I'm disappointed, you know, that San Francisco did it first. I hate when they do that.
Me too. I agree with you.
You know, and then Vermont. I mean, come on. You know, so you know, I always feel, and this is my New York thing. You know, I always think we should lead because we're the most diverse city. We're the state. We're on an international stage like none other. So it makes me work harder when I see other cities or other states grabbing the mantle of leadership on this issue.
Good, and we have more 100 Best Companies here in New York region than we have anywhere else in the country. So I agree with you. Let's get ahead and make sure that we're leading so that others can follow.
But if I could say, if anyone on this Google chat is from Vermont and San Francisco, we like you.
We like you, and we want to know how you did it.
I'd like to break in here. We have a question that basically talking about why there is still so much resistance to flexibility. You know, Carol and I get to deal with 100 best companies and the companies that are competing to be best companies, but that's 2.5 million workers. There's a whole lot of other people employed by companies that have resistance. So do you see the law, a law kind of helping, you know, break it down and kind of helping to get rid of this resistance?
Well, actually, I think you raise a very good point. You know, it's tough to attack culture and status quo. Remember, people have been raised to that 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 6 work schedule since the beginning of time. We You have an hour for lunch. You know, in the good old days, it was 2 hours in a martini lunch for some workers. But basically, we have had the same workforce model for generations. So to change the status quo is not going to be easy. There are companies who look at flex time and think it's something you know, anti-business, and it's not. So we're going to have to do a lot more conferences and a lot more thinking about this. We've got to go to Washington and lobby members of Congress to say, you know, while you're thinking about the minimum wage and while you're thinking about how to take people who may start at the bottom economically but bring people to the middle class, which has always been the New York City tradition, and our country believes that inherently. If you bring people up, we have to include flex time as you know, as part of this. So we've got to sell the idea. We've got to say it's good for the bottom line, it's good for business, it's good for workers. But the business model for our activism is we've got to sell this, and by selling this, we've got to educate people who are sympathetic. And so if you happen to be a mom or dad in a good place where you have the flexibility, don't stop until the other moms and dads in the daycare center and the preschool have that same flexibility, because you're certainly watching them struggle, and that is everybody's issue.
Boy, that's a great rallying cry for us. And, you know, one of the things that we're looking forward to is celebrating National Flex Day with you at the end of this year, at the end of next year in October. Maybe we can cook up something really exciting for New York City to celebrate National.
I'm taking the day off on that day.
Oh, good.
That's a great way to celebrate.
Come on, it's great. But no, you know, we're going to do some great work on that day, and we're going to showcase why it's important, and that's why we have these days.
Yes, excellent.
So Carol and Scott, we're coming to the end of our time together. I'd like to thank you both for joining us today to talk about flexibility through a public policy lens. I also want to encourage everyone who has joined us today to read the full report, Families and Flexibility. There's a link to it on workingmother.com, and of course at comptroller.nyc.gov. You can read the report there too. And as always, our conversation regarding flex, parenting, careers, everything regarding work life is always continuing on our Facebook, Twitter, even Pinterest and LinkedIn. So join us there. And until next time, everyone, and Carol and Scott, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. It was great to talk to you today. Appreciate your support.
Thank you.